Let's talk top three losers. This is where I know I'm going to get heated here because there's some teams that are near and dear to my heart in here, but I don't talk. I don't do these things with my heart. I speak my mind, and all bias aside, we're going to go top three, and we're going to start with the Detroit Tigers, an organization that is certainly very near and dear to my heart. I played 5 years in that organization. Know a lot of people there, want them to do well, will always want them to do well, have been around the organization since I was 10, 11 years old. I am very disappointed in the Detroit Tigers and what they did at this trade deadline. This is a seller's market. This was a seller's market for a while, and you had one of the best pitchers available in Jack Flaherty and didn't trade him away until the very end and did not get, in my opinion, enough for him. It was a very underwhelming return in a seller's market for Jack Flaherty. That's my thoughts here. I think at this point, Scott Harris and company for the Detroit Tigers have had 2 years to show that they're the regime that needs to turn things around. And between this ownership and Chris Ilitch, who you can't convince me, you cannot convince me that Chris Ilitch loves the Detroit Tigers as much as Mike Ilitch. Between Chris Ilitch, between this front office that was Alavila, and now it's Scott Harris and company, it's not getting the job done. It's not. What are we waiting for with Jack Flaherty? This market was screaming to go get something done. The Houston Astros, from what I heard, reached out about Jack Flaherty, and apparently the price was too high, which makes no sense to me with what ended up happening to them. I I don't love the prospects that they got in return for Jack Flaherty in a market that I think could have netted a lot more. Look at what the Padres had to give up three top 10 prospects, three top 10 prospects for a reliever rental. A reliever rental netted the Marlins three top 10 prospects. And the Tigers just didn't get a good enough return, in my opinion. Trey Sweeney could be good. I hope he's good. But I just think they played themselves out of the market. I thought the market screamed sell, sell, sell. And I think at the very end, it was, oh man, we held on to our cards for far too long. We missed out on the best opportunities. And now we're forced into a situation where we have to get something. That is why I think the Tigers are a loser. I think they played themselves out of the seller's market. I think they really messed up. And I think at the very end, it was Jack Flaherty. Okay, here, this is the best we can get right now. Oh, Mark Canha, what can we get here at the buzzer? I think they messed it up. I am disappointed in Scott Harris and company there with the Detroit Tigers and their handling of the deadline. They're at number 3 for biggest losers for me. At number two, a big loser at the trade deadline, the Houston Astros. Let me explain this a little bit. I do believe the Astros got better, right? The Astros added Yusei Kikuchi. Good lefty arm. Good, I mean, like, good, can have good stuff, good strikeout numbers. Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers on a piece of paper right now. Don't look at the numbers on the back of his baseball card. It'll show you a 4.75 ERA. You take a step deeper into the advanced analytics, and they do get a bit better. A 3.98 expected ERA, a 3.39 expected FIP, and a 3.46 if we really want to get deep. And if you really love advanced analytics, a 3.46 Sierra. But we're talking an arm that is really there to eat innings. They desperately needed an arm. They got it. I just think they gave up way too much for an arm that's not even pitching well. He has not been good. They gave up Jake Bloss a good prospect, very young, potential to be a good starting pitcher in the league. Loperfido, who's been huge for the Astros this year, really good for them when it was desperately needed due to injuries and some other things. Loperfido came up and had some big offensive moments, really good defensively. That one's going to hurt. Will Wagner, son of Billy Wagner, putting up some really good numbers. You could have told me that they were just going to give up Jake Bloss for Kikuchi, and I probably would have said that's too much. In fact, I thought the trade originally was just Bloss for Kikuchi straight up, and I thought that was too much. So, my thoughts on this. I think the Astros are big losers here, and I don't love cussing on here. This deserves it, in my opinion. If you're a kid, you don't want to hear this, cover your ears. But Dana Brown, what the fuck are you doing? This is a nightmare of a trade. We can say, and you can say, that the market was crazy out there. But it wasn't before the trade. It wasn't at the end of the trade deadline with Jack Flaherty. The Zach Eflin trade, they didn't give up much for that. So I'll propose to you that you set this ridiculous seller's market. The Houston Astros made this a seller's market with that wildly ridiculous trade to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays did great here. A great ad for them, for Kikuchi. And I do think Kikuchi is going to help the Houston Astros. He's an arm that they desperately needed. But this is way too much. And it wasn't a seller's market before. It was for a little while after, probably because you said it. And then at the very end, with the Dodgers getting Jack Flaherty, well, they didn't give up near as much to get him, and definitely a better pitcher. Disappointing, frustrating, didn't get the first baseman you need. Didn't even address the first base situation. You're just going to run John Singleton out there for the rest of the year? Again, no discredit to John Singleton. I like John Singleton a lot. But there's plenty. You go into a trade deadline saying we need a starting pitcher and a first baseman desperately. You go and give some of your best prospects to the Blue Jays to get the pitcher, give up way too much to get the pitcher, and don't even add a first baseman. Don't even address that situation. And then on top of that, you probably have a lot of other teams pissed off at you for making this a ridiculous seller's market. Man, I didn't even know what to say on Monday night when this happened. I was perplexed. I saw Jake Bloss come through for Kikuchi and thought, no, I don't. That's a lot. Then I saw that these other names were coming out, and I thought, what, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. involved in this trade? What is happening? Nope. Turns out that's a big no. The Astros did get better. They failed miserably at this trade deadline, though. I tried to come around here, and I started to Tuesday morning. I woke up, and I said, and here's the positives. I woke up and said, you know what? What is everyone complaining for? What are these prospects? The Astros have gone to 7 straight ALCSs. In case you haven't heard, the Astros are inevitable. They're in a win now mode. You have an owner in Jim Crane that is extremely committed to this team and says, as long as I am here and owning this team, the window will always be open. So you'll pay to go get players. What good are prospects? But then they don't address the first base situation. They really did give up way too much for Kikuchi, who's, by the way, a rental. What are we doing? You don't even have control of the guy. And you're giving up some big-time prospects. So I was just firing. I was just firing off tweets the other night, Monday night. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe my eyes. Thought Vladdy Jr. might be involved. Thought I didn't know who was involved, but thought there was more. It didn't happen. And then Dana Brown goes in front of the media at the end of the game and says, yeah, this was important for us to do. We needed an arm. And with the market being such, in his words, the market is such that we had to give up players that we aren't happy giving up to get it done. Did the Astros get better? Yes. Did they give up entirely too much to get a pitcher that hasn't been good, that I think for the Astros best projects as for the rest of the regular season, a rotation depth arm that they desperately needed. And in the playoffs, if you can get there, a good lefty arm that can eat some innings in a relief role, a guy that can come in to get a lefty matchup. These are all valuable. It's valuable to have, but do you want that for Blas Loperfido and Will Wagner? No, way too steep of a price. I think if I'm being brutally honest with Dana Brown, I think he has a brilliant eye for talent. We saw that with the Atlanta Braves. I think he is a very, very good draft guy. I think he has a really good eye for talent. I think that is his niche and his specialty. I think he might be in a little over his head come trade deadline time as a general manager. But again, good eye for talent, has seemingly done well in a draft. We'll see in the end. But I did not think he had a good trade deadline. I thought this was a bad trade deadline for the Houston Astros, and that's why they are on my list of top losers at number 2. How are the Astros number 2, you ask? Well, let's talk about the biggest loser at the trade deadline, the Chicago White Sox. If you can't win more games on the field, if you can't stop losing on the field, how could you possibly lose any more than the Chicago White Sox are? Well, you can lose the trade deadline as well, turns out. They're fighting to be the worst team of all time. Stack another loss onto them. The Chicago White Sox failed this deadline miserably. You had some pieces that you could get some really, really good gets for. And Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert Jr., for a couple different reasons that didn't end up happening. Luis Robert Jr. probably played himself out of a big trade, in my opinion, a little bit. Strikeout numbers are astronomical. His numbers actually aren't good this year. Garrett Crochet, the words came out and rumors, and then apparently confirmed came out that Garrett Crochet said he didn't want to pitch in the playoffs for a team unless they agreed on an extension with him before. And obviously that really slashes the market for you. But I also think there's a degree of the White Sox leaning on that a little bit as a crutch for not making this happen. Well, now what? Now what are you going to do with him? You ain't going to pitch in October with him. I think the White Sox could win every game from here for the rest of the season, and they're not going to make a playoff spot. Let's also talk about Eric Fetty, who is one of the best pitchers available at the trade deadline. You ended up trading him to the St. Louis Cardinals for nothing. You traded Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham in what became a seller's market, and you ended up netting Miguel Vargas from the Dodgers and a couple of mid to late 20s prospects for one of the best pitchers at the trade deadline. I'll say it again. The Miami Marlins got 3 top 10 prospects from the Padres in exchange for a rental reliever. The White Sox gave up their best pitcher this season, a guy that has 7 of their 27 wins as a team, and Tommy Pham for a bag of peanuts. I mean, Miguel Vargas, what good is he going to do the Chicago White Sox? What are we even thinking with that trade? And the 2 prospects aren't good enough. I have said so many times that I am done talking about this team, the Chicago White Sox, and they continually piss me off. Jerry Reinsdorf, shame on you for everything happening in this organization. Everything. This team is miserable. They are historically bad. Could potentially be the worst of all time. The front office that you put in place was literally just put in place so that you could manipulate them. They're not a good enough front office. They're all buddy-buddy. Everybody's buddy-buddy. And it shows. They have the 2 longest losing streaks in franchise history, and they have both happened this year at separate times. And the manager's still there. And then you royally screw up the trade deadline. Oh my God, what are we doing? Just a nightmare of a season, a nightmare of a front office, a nightmare ownership. Congratulations. You also got rid of Eloy Jimenez at the end to dump some contract, to make this team even cheaper, to make even more money. Congratulations, Jerry. Congrats. You're getting what you want. A shitty team and a low payroll. As a fan of the game, it just pisses me off. This one, more than anybody, right? You can live with what the Astros did. They knew they had a need in a rotation, and they went and gave up the farm to get them. But you can live with that. Your team's improving for this year, right? Your team's going for it for this year. But I can't be okay with this as a baseball fan. The manipulation of the front office, the mishandling of the players, the poor treatment of the team, the mishandling of the trade deadline, the buddy-buddy situation in the front office, the buddy-buddy situation down on the field with the managerial staff. It doesn't sit well with me, and it shouldn't with any baseball fans. I know it doesn't with Chicago White Sox fans, but they have their finger on the pulse every single day. If you don't know what's going on with the Chicago White Sox, I hope this gives you just a little bit of clarity. Because as a fan of baseball, this should just piss you off. And it pisses me off. The Chicago White Sox are the biggest loser of the 2024 MLB season, and they're the biggest losers of the 2024 MLB trade deadline. Tack another one onto there. Tack another one onto the loss column. Unbelievable. Top 3 losers: Detroit Tigers, Houston Astros, Chicago White Sox.